Yo, what's up, chefs? It's Vinny, and today I'm going to be talking about my plans for League Start. This is going to be a bit of a chill video, probably just, some yapping back and forth, but as you can see here on my beautiful notepad, I'm going to be talking about my build plans. That's going to be ascendancies, skills. I've even mapped out my passive tree ideas as well, whether I'm going to go like elemental or bleed. I'm not quite sure yet on that, but we're going to talk about both. I'm also going to go over my endgame plans, so like how I'm planning to progress my atlas, what nodes I'm going to focus on first, as well as pinnacle encounters and stuff. My projected primary currency farm strategy. Keep in mind this one's probably going to be super subject to change depending on how things shake out once we get the patch notes, etc. Also going to dive in a little bit on my plans for content creation, like what my first couple of videos are going to be, what's coming up over the next couple of days in advance of the league launch, as well as what I'm going to be doing right after the league launch as well. And then finally, I'm also going to talk about my second and third build ideas, because I'm pretty confident I already know what these are probably going to be. At least, like, I know for sure what my second one is going to be, unless something major happens, like some Black Swan event. So I'm also just going to give like a super brief overview of what I'm planning to do for that as well. But starting off with the build plan, we're going to talk about the Ascendancy first. So I am planning on going a Ritualist Huntress, for those of you that don't know yet. I'm sure plenty of you know that I was planning on doing Huntress, but I do think I'm going to start off with the Ritualist. My plans for the Ascendancy nodes are going to be to go left first. Well, I'll talk about that in just a second, but ultimately the 8 nodes I'm planning to get are going to be the 4 on the left over here. I'm going to probably do the 15 elemental or minus 15 Elirez. If not that, it'll be the reduced maximum mana. I can't really imagine the reduced spirit is going to be the way to go. This one definitely sounds like the worst offender, the one that I think very few people are going to end up taking. So it'll either be the Elirez or reduced max mana. And of course, we're going to get the +1 ring slot. If you can't see because of my camera, this little node, this notable right here, it's going to be +1 ring slot. I'm sure many of you have heard about that. Obviously, that's going to be insanely broken. There's a little bit of debate going on right now whether or not people think this is going to be like an actual ring, like in terms of whether or not it gets affected by ingenuity. And the reasoning there is apparently in the video, like when they teased it, it's going to be like a ring that goes around your neck, like on a chain. And then this next node up here at the top, the next notable, is 25% increased bonuses gained from equipped rings and amulets. So some people think that the way they worded that is just due to the fact that this third ring is actually going to get counted as an amulet. Who knows, really? If that is how it works, then you're basically just getting like a pseudo ingenuity on all of your rings and amulets. But then, of course, that third ring, if you get an actual ingenuity, will not be getting the bonuses increased from the belt. So just something to keep in mind there. We don't know what it's going to be yet. We'll have to test it. I'm sure we'll figure out pretty shortly into the actual league launch. We'll just have to see. Either way, though, it seems like it's going to be very, very strong. Outside of getting those 4 nodes, my other plan is to also come up here and grab just these first 2 nodes for As the Whispers Ask, grant skill Ritual Sacrifice. For those of you that don't know, Ritual Sacrifice is going to be a pseudo headhunter as a skill. If you don't know what headhunter is, basically when you kill a rare monster, Ritual Sacrifice in specific is going to allow you to perform a little animation. Like, so you're going to cast a spell, you're going to, stab the body of the rare enemy that you just killed, and you're going to gain all of their modifiers. So if they had haste, you'll get haste. If they had proximal tangibility, you'll get proximal tangibility, and you'll get just all of them. We don't know exactly the limits on that. Like, technically, the As Merry Wisps new mechanic adds modifiers. Like, are we going to get those? We don't know the full scope of this skill, but it definitely seems like it's going to be quite good. If the animation ends up being super long or like tediously long, once we scale the build enough, we might end up dropping this just for sake of speed and efficiency. Like, we don't want to have to sit there 4 or 5 times a map and do this like 5-second animation if that's what it is. Hopefully it's not that long though, because it definitely seems like a really cool skill if you ask me. And then after that, I'm going to come up and get Blood Boil, at least for clear, like doing maps, just like general content. I would probably be using Blood Boil. For pinnacle encounters where I'm specifically just fighting a boss, I might go for As the Whispers Demand instead. So like if I was fighting Arbiter of Ash or something along those lines, where I'm not really going to have access to a rare monster to use Ritual Sacrifice on, then I might go As the Whispers Demand to get that one modifier. And then of course, if it's just a singular boss, Blood Boil is not going to do us any good anyways. So that's going to be my plans for the Ritualist Ascendancy nodes. There's a pretty low percentage chance I'm not going to be the one to do this, but I envision there's going to be people that mess around with Wildwood Persistence and figure out something like pretty strong and potentially broken there, or just quite useful. If that ends up being the case, there's a chance that I will incorporate that into my build, but for the time being, right at the beginning, I'm not planning on initially using that or getting that within my first 8 points. On the flip side, although it's very unlikely, I think, because I'm pretty sure I'm locked into the Ritualist Ascendancy, but on the off chance that I make a last minute swap and decide to go Amazon, I'm pretty confident that the choices I would go would be, I don't have a particular order set up here, but I'm pretty confident that I would get Critical Strike, this first notable. Excess accuracy or excess chance to hit becomes partially critical hit chance. This is another one of the ones where people don't know for sure if that additional critical hit chance you're going to get is going to be like base critical chance that would then get multiplied by your increases to critical hit chance. Like it'd basically be, increasing the base crit chance of your weapon. I think that's what it's going to be. Like I said, no one knows for sure. I don't believe yet. If it's the flip side of you're just getting increased critical hit chance and it's not improving your base, then this would be pretty useless, I think. So I would not get it. And that's why I'm not super confident that that's what it's going to be. I think it is going to be base crit chance. If it is base crit chance, then I'll probably go Critical Strike. I'm also going to get this first notable here, Predatory Instinct. Reveal weaknesses against rare and unique enemies, and you get 50% more damage. And then finally, I will probably get Stalking Panther and Elemental Infusion. And there's a chance that instead of Predatory Instinct, I would get Mystic Harvest for the elemental damage Life Leech. I would just have to test that and see how much the Life Leech actually feels good. From my understanding, Life Leech is kind of meh in PoE 2, so I don't think I would go that route, but I'd probably just go this route where I get these 3 notables right here, get none of their follow-ups, and then just get Stalking Panther. I think Stalking Panther is going to be extremely good for the people that do decide to go Amazon, at least, early on, until you can just get massive defenses from your armor because you have really high budget. But early on, whenever we're in a fresh league start environment, I feel like Stalking Panther is going to be super strong. You just get, full evasion, helmet, gloves, and boots. And then you get an EV/energy shield body armor, or maybe even a full energy shield body armor. So you don't even feel the penalty of the half evasion rating on your body armor nearly as much. I think that's just going to be insanely, insanely strong. Moving on from that though, like I said, I do highly believe that I'm going to go Ritualist, and with that idea in mind, the skills that I'm looking to get, there's super subject to change here. The skills are one of the things that I'm least confident about because we've yet to really get to play with them and even read most of their descriptions. Half of these, I've basically no idea what they're going to do, so this is super subject to change, but my initial plan is to go Ritualist, of course, and then do an elemental build alongside that. So it's going to be Lightning Spear. I imagine Stormlance, but I don't really fully know what Stormlance does. I've seen it. I've seen the teaser, but I don't fully know what it does. Lightning Spear, I envision, is going to be quite good. And then as for the other skills, who really knows, to be honest? I'm not really sure what Wind Serpent's Fury does. Who knows how good Spear of Solaris is going to be, etc. So we'll have to test all those other ones out, but initially, my plan is to go Lightning Spear, Stormlance, and for spirit skills, I will probably go Herald of Thunder. Herald of Thunder, Wind Dancer. I've got them pulled up in game, I think. I'll probably go Wind Dancer, Herald of Thunder. After that, it's hard to say. I might go Attrition early on because you get more, percent more damage to rare and unique enemies. So for pinnacle encounters early on when the gear's not that great, I could see Attrition being decent. But outside of Wind Dance or Herald of Thunder, not 100% sure yet. Maybe Grim Feast, but of course we have to see the nerfs to Grim Feast. So, it's completely hard to say. Combat Frenzy is another option. I don't know how useful frenzy charges are going to be for my setup because I'm not going Amazon, where consuming the charges gets you the elemental infusions. So we will just have to see. The spirit skills is like super up in the air, especially because there's going to be new spirit skills coming as well. Following that, here is going to be my projected passive tree setup. Like, once again, I hate to say it again, but this is obviously subject to change. This is going to be something that I'm just looking at as I'm leveling up, so I don't have to do so much thinking about exactly where I'm going to place my nodes. Of course, while I'm leveling up, I will be thinking about it, but this is kind of just like a placeholder idea, and I think it would be pretty decent. It is worth noting that these nodes here at the beginning are possibly going to change for Huntress. It's a little bit weird, but I didn't actually know about this until super recently, to be perfectly honest. But if you look at these nodes up here, for Sorceress and every other class, these are just like spell damage nodes. But if you go to Witch, they actually change to like minion and spell damage, and then even these change as well, whether you're doing Witch or Sorceress. I see a universe where these don't change for Huntress, because Huntress and Ranger use very similar things, like attack speed and projectile damage are fine for both of the classes, but just keep in mind that they could change a little bit. With that being said, I don't think those nodes matter too much in the grand scheme of things. It is only just like these nodes right here that change, nothing else changes, so it's not going to be that big of a deal. But for my first plan, going like an elemental setup with Lightning Spear, even though I'm going Ritualist, my plan is to go with this tree. I'm obviously going to come down here, grab all of these nodes. Then I'm going to bounce over here just to grab Blur primarily for the movement speed, and then just a bunch of increased projectile damage. These are like some really solid projectile damage nodes early on. I think like deep late game, once I've got better gear, I'll probably drop all of this section right here, and I'll probably go like out on the outside for saving a bunch of extra points to put somewhere else. But league start scenario, I think this is going to be where I start. I'm going to come down and grab these three nodes, maybe grab the Jewel Socket early on, maybe not, depends. I'm going to grab Maiming Strike for the increased movement speed from this node, as well as just maim and a bunch of extra attack damage. I'm going to grab the skill speed and movement speed. I'm going to come grab all of the spear nodes, even though I'm pretty sure these are just placeholders and they'll likely be different, but I imagine they're still going to be really strong, just like the quarterstaff nodes are really strong for Monk. So I'm sure I'll be grabbing these pretty early. Somewhere around there, I'm going to probably end up picking up these block nodes for like buckler stuff. You can see I've got literally just a spear and a buckler on this POB, and we have 66% block chance, which is actually kind of insane, like, to think about. I mean, that's going to be such a massive defensive layer, and it's not that difficult to get with the bucklers as well as the passive skills. The bucklers come with 24% chance to block flat, and then obviously you can get increased block chance on the shield or on the buckler, and then there's some really decent increased block chance nodes around here, particularly these nodes right here, as well as some of the ones over here. But yeah, so I'll grab the spear nodes, grab the buckler nodes, then we're probably going to move, not sure exactly the routing after all of this. I don't know if I want to go up first to grab like Bestial Skin and Falcon Technique, or if I want to come down. I'll have to just kind of think about that. But ultimately, it's going to end up like this, where I'm going to come down. I'm going to eventually get Spiked Shield for increased defenses from the shield and increased attack damage once again. I'm also going to grab a ton of attack speed right here for one-handed weapons. It's going to be a total of 3, 6, 9, 12, and then 18% increased attack speed, which a decent chunk of our attack speed is going to be coming from right here, as well as also Falcon Technique, of course, is going to give us quite a bit. And then after that, we're going to come grab 15% Ellie resistance penetration, as well as another 15% lightning resistance penetration, so that's 30% lightning pen. And then we're going to come over here and grab a lightning rod. And so the idea here is to go non-crit early on with the lightning spear setup. I think crit, obviously, is going to be quite expensive. Don't think that's like the most... the best choice in a league start perspective or in a league start situation. I think going for lightning rod, since it is pretty close, we have access to it. Starting off with non-crit or a non-crit setup is definitely going to be quite a bit more effective, I would say. And then after we get the stuff down here, or I don't know, like I said, I don't know the routing, whether we're going to go up top or down low first, but ultimately we're also going to come up here, grab some jewel sockets, We're gonna grab Bestial Skin, Enhanced Reflexes, grab another Jewel Socket, Falcon Technique, another Jewel Socket, and then finally Kite Runner for the movement speed and projectile damage, projectile speed, all that good stuff. Because obviously for the lightning setup, we will be playing ranged primarily, like with Lightning Spear, we're gonna be throwing the spear. And although I do think that a bow quiver setup would be good for Huntress, I'm definitely planning on doing Spear Buckler. I think that's gonna be very fun. I just want to try out the full Amazon theme. So we will be using Lightning Spear with the range, so projectile stuff is going to be quite good for this passive tree setup. On the flip side, if we decide to go bleed, which I think we will try both, we're going to try elemental stuff first with the Lightning Spear. Depending on how that feels, whether it feels good or bad, to be honest, actually, at some point we're going to try a bleed setup. Now, truth be told, I haven't played anything that's like bleed related since I played a Lacerate Bleed Gladiator in POE 1, which was like legit 5+ years ago. So my bleed knowledge is a little bit rusty, just full transparency there. With that being said, this is my projected bleed tree. Very likely would change because by the time I decide to go bleed, I'm sure some people have already figured some stuff out, so I'll do some research. But this would be my initial plan. Something to take note of here is that there's not many bleed nodes like super close to Huntress. A lot of them are like over here for Mercenary and what I assume will eventually be Duelist, and even over towards the Warrior side as well. These are the only ones that are kind of close. To my understanding, for bleed builds, you ideally want to get as close to 100% chance to inflict a bleed as possible, so that way when you do hit really hard, you actually inflict the bleed as well. With this setup, we don't have that. We have like 10, 20, and then we're going to get 50% from a support gem, Lacerate. So it'll be like 70% chance to inflict a bleed if we're critting, and then there's also going to be 6%, 12%, 18%, 18% increase of 70%. So that's, I don't know, that's like an extra 15%. So it'd be like an 85% chance to inflict a bleed if we hit with a crit. So it's not quite 100%, but it is pretty close. I don't think it's reasonable to figure out the points to come all the way over here, here, or here. They're just quite far away and not really practical. So I'm sure I think there's also a unique spear that gives you increased chance to inflict a bleed or extra like base chance to inflict a bleed. So something like that could easily get you up to that 100% chance. There's probably a plethora of unique items that honestly could get you up to 100% increased chance or 100% chance to inflict a bleed. With that being said, this passive tree is somewhat similar to the previous one. The main difference is that we're not picking up like any projectile damage anywhere. We're just going for melee damage, physical damage, bleed magnitude, damage with ailments. We're still getting the attack speed. We're still getting the really high chance to block, of course, with the good buckler nodes here and here. The spear nodes. Most of the other stuff is still very similar. We're also not getting lightning rod with the bleed setup because we'll probably be using a physical skill. So we do actually pick up some crit chance. You can see with the item we have, just the spear, which is the sea glass spear. It has a base of 10% crit chance. It's the only spear that has that. So I think this spear is going to be really good, particularly if you're playing a bleed or a crit build, just in general, whether it's elemental or bleed. If you're playing a crit build, I feel like Sea Glass Spear is going to be really, really good. It's the only one with 10% base crit chance. With this passive tree setup and that spear, which this one has an extra 2.49%, which in a league start position, that might be kind of hard to get, but eventually you'll be able to get that. With this spear, though, we have a 41% crit chance with the passive tree, and we're making use of the first approach node. I think it's going to be good in a league start position. We get a lot of increased crit chance against enemies on full life, so this setup would be pretty good for like clearing maps and things of that nature. And there's a couple like slight alterations we'd have to make for bosses, but this is the setup that we would likely be going for. Or something similar, particularly if we were going for a bleed setup right away. So this is just maybe if that's what you want to do, this is what I would do first. Now that we've covered the build, I'm going to try and blast through the rest of these pretty quick because the video is starting to get a bit long. But as far as my endgame plans go, my initial goal is going to be to blast through the Atlas progression, try and get all 40 points as quick as possible. For the campaign, I'm going to try and waste as little time in the campaign as possible, just blast through that as well. Get to endgame, get my 40 points because now it is going to be a maximum of 40 instead of 30. And my first plan is to try out all of the new stuff, so like all of the Asmiri Wisp nodes that are down here at the bottom right, the new Essence nodes. I'm just going to try out everything new as much as possible, and then as soon as I've tested things, I'm going to start working on figuring out what feels like it's actually the best, and then I'm just going to like blast Waystones for quite a bit, try out the new tower changes. I want to try out the new unique maps that they said they're adding in. Those look really sick. And ultimately just like get a feel for all of the new endgame changes that they've done in regards to the Atlas and Atlas tree. Moving on from that though, my primary currency farm strategy, like once I've had my fill of just, blasting through Waystones, testing out all the new endgame stuff, just kind of like getting my feet wet there, my actual currency farm strategy for, the league at large, unless, something changes, this is obviously subject to change, but it's going to be Trial of Chaos and Trial of Secamus. So I'd probably do Trial of Chaos first to get kind of my first like pot of gold or just, sum of currency. And then once I've done that for a bit and I'm starting to stack up some reserves, then I'll move on to Trial of Secamus, particularly once people have got some good relics on the market and I can buy some good relics and just do a relic farm strategy with the goal to obviously eventually get a last flame, sell the last flame, and then just use that massive amount of currency influx to kind of like fund my other projects, build ideas, and all that good stuff. Following that, for the content creation plans side of things, obviously some of you may already know I am doing a League Start survival guide that's going to be coming out over the next couple of days leading up to April 4th, and there'll probably be 1 or 2 videos that happen like on April 4th or right after April 4th, just because I want to try to get a little bit more information before I post them, because I think the information that I might get could change the content of the video, so I want to try and just provide the most up-to-date and valuable information possible. And unfortunately, it seems like we're getting the patch notes a little bit later than I would have anticipated, so that's why it might be a tiny bit later. Outside of that, I'm going to be obviously posting build guides for my Huntress as soon as possible, as soon as I'm confident that the build is actually in a good spot. I'm obviously going to test it quite a bit, do pinnacle encounters, all the good stuff, and I'll be posting build guides as soon as possible. After I've got the build guides set up and done for the Huntress, I'm probably going to start making some more generalized content for the end game, like how to juice your Waystones, how to farm properly. I'm going to test out some currency farm strategies, just like some general end game guides and content, things of that nature. And then we'll move on to our second and third build and kind of do a similar process, do the build guides, do some extra stuff, third build, build guides, some extra stuff, so on and so forth. Moving on to the second and third build ideas is going to be the last topic of the video. So like I said before at the beginning, I know pretty much for sure what my second build idea is going to be, and that's actually going to be the new Witch Ascendancy, the Lich. I haven't given a ton of thought to where I'd put my Ascendancy nodes, but I do have an idea in mind. Like I said, by the time I get to this build, I'm sure other people will have started with the Lich, and therefore there'll probably be some information on it. I'll do some research, and things are subject to change for like the millionth time I've said that. But my initial idea would be to go for Crystalline Phylactery. Maybe some of you are going to start with Lich. You could use this info if you want, but I'm going to go Crystalline Phylactery first. Obviously, the goal here is to just get the best jewel possible that, my currency tab can afford. Slam that in here, get the 100% increased effect, and that's, going to be an insanely strong node for just 2 points. Getting 100% increased effect of a jewel is absolutely crazy. After that, I don't know the order here, but the other 6 points that I would get would be Eldritch Empowerment. Non-channeling spells cost an additional 3% of maximum energy shield, but they do 30% more damage. The skill setup for this build, I'd be doing some like Essence Drain, Contagion setup. Obviously, I believe with the 100% or 100 plus new support gems, we're finally going to get some ways to actually scale chaos damage in the game. currently in the first league, there was like nowhere near enough ways to actually scale chaos damage, so essence drain contagion builds just like didn't actually work really once you got to endgame. But I'm pretty sure we're gonna get some of that stuff. So crystalline phylactery first, eldritch empowerment will definitely be in there somewhere, and then they've actually got these nodes right here, Dominion over Flesh and Blackened Heart, reversed in the image. I can't remember if they talked about that in the Q&A, but they confirmed that somewhere, that Blackened Heart is actually going to go right here, and Dominion over Flesh is actually going to go right here. So my other 4 points would go towards Necromantic Conduit. You and allies in your presence have Unholy Might while you're not low on mana. Lose 5% of mana per second. If you're not familiar with Unholy Might, it's right over here at the bottom right. Unholy Might is a buff that grants 30% of all damage as extra chaos damage. This is quite nice. And then after that, like I said, Blackened Heart's going to be over here, so I would then get Blackened Heart. 4% increased magnitude of Unholy Might buffs you grant per 100 maximum mana. So this would probably end up feeling kind of like Archmage Spark, in the sense that it's going to be a mana stacker setup. But it's going to be like a mana stacker, essence drain, contagion, probably super high energy shield, all that good stuff. I envision that this build will actually be incredibly strong. It's going to depend on the support gems that come out, but if I was a betting man, I would assume that there's a high likelihood that like essence drain, contagion, lich builds are going to be one of the better builds in the upcoming league. I do think Spectres are also going to be insanely broken, because there's just no way that they've been able to balance Spectres in advance with like all the different enemy minion or enemy monster types. Surely some of them are going to be extremely broken, but outside of that, I do think Essence Drain, Contagion, Lich, some sort of like Curse, damage over time, Chaos damage over time setup is going to be very, very strong. And that is going to conclude the video. I hope you guys enjoyed. Like I said at the beginning, this is more of a chill video. I don't normally do videos quite like this, but I'm interested to know, what are your guys' plans for the league start? Do you have a build idea in mind? What ascendancy are you going? Things of that nature, I'd be curious to see. Feel free to let me know down in the comments. I do read basically every single comment I get, even though I can't respond to all of them at this point. Just remember, I do read them. So feel free to let me know in the comments. Other than that, I hope you guys are excited for 0.2, and I will catch you all on April 4th. Later, chefs. And last but not least, take it easy, chefs.
Fade away.